welcome along today. So glad that everyone's come along for what's going to be the final one of our webinar series for the year. So if you've joined us for any of the previous webinars, thank you. We've had, large attendances across the different sessions. If you want to catch any of the previous sessions and you didn't make it, we have put them all available on our YouTube page. So I will drop the link for that YouTube page in the chat in just a minute. But today, the topic of the webinar is going to be creating podcasts with the power of AI using Adobe Podcast. And Adobe Podcast is an exciting tool that you all have access to. And I'm going to introduce my colleague Louise, who is going to be leading the session today. We will be collaborating at different points. Hi, Louise. So yeah, I'll introduce Louise and hope you all enjoy the session today.
Thanks, Alistair. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Just before we do begin, as Alistair said, today's about looking at Adobe Podcast, but it would be good to understand for those of you on the call, how many of you have either got a regular podcast already that you produce, or is anyone planning to use podcast more regularly? So it would be good to understand just in the chat, if you want to just pop in the chat, either regular podcaster or hobby podcaster or beginner, just to understand, where people are at. And Alistair's just dropped the link to Adobe Podcast in the chat as well. So please feel free, if you want to follow along, you can. Acutely aware that, of course, this is to do with audio, and I'm speaking throughout the meeting. And you to have a chance to do that as well. Might not have the opportunity during this session, but if you want to follow along with some of what we're looking at, then you can hopefully have a chance to look afterwards. So Andrew, thank you. So you're just a listener of a podcast, which is fantastic. And I think probably most of us are, or some of us are maybe in that category as well. I know for one I am. And I actually, just as part of this session, I thought, where does the word podcast even come from? And I did look it up, actually. So apparently it's from the word broadcast, and it's the pod and then the cast, bringing it together. And it was actually first used in 2004, which is crazy, in the Guardian newspaper. So they had made this term and around the audio. So with podcasting, again, it's another medium for us to use to connect with people and connect with our students or members of staff or colleagues. And I think we can all agree that we often get screen fatigue, and audio tends to be that escape from that visual stimulation. I know for me, I go for a run or I go for a walk, I tend to, listen to something. And that's the beauty of it. Our phones are connected all the time. We have connected cars. Headphones are now a fashion item. So audio tends to be the companion to our daily lives. So using this medium to connect with students and connect with other people is really powerful and really valuable. It also allows us to be more actively listening as well, so you can engage your mind and focus your attention once you only have the audio piece there. Also allows for more flexible learning. So again, we can have it anytime and listen anywhere. But it also allows students, I think, to and colleagues to do some critical thinking. So you can listen to a podcast that's around debate or analyze content or tell a story. So there's different ways in which you can use that audio to your advantage. So we'll look at the tool then and the mechanism for you to record your podcast. And I think Adobe Podcast is a very simple, easy to use tool, and it really allows you to focus on your narrative and your structure and the content of what you want to do in your podcast. And then the tool part is taken care of. So let me just share my screen, and I'm going to include my sound because we are going to be listening to some audio. And excuse me, because I've got two screens. So if I look to the side, I'm just looking at my other screen while I'm not looking at you. But this is Adobe Podcast. It's included with your Express license, so you have access to the premium version of that. And it's a very straightforward tool. There's three main aspects of it. You can check your mic. So this one here. And this just allows you to fix any issues with your microphone before you record anything. Allows you to just record your voice, and I'll show a demo of that in just a moment. And it will tell you whether you're too far away or too close or too loud, and checks all your audio. But the other great thing the podcast has is it's got this enhanced speech, and I'll show you a demonstration of this. It blows my mind actually, how amazing this is. So you don't have to have a fancy mic in a studio. You can record just from your laptop, and with the enhanced speech AI tools, it will automatically enhance that speech for you, remove any background noise, and really make you sound like you're in a studio with a proper mic. And then the studio is where you would then just record your podcast. Now, the great thing about Adobe Podcast as well is if I scroll down here, you've got some other options. And we've also got templates that you can use within the studio section if you choose to do that as well. So if you don't know where to start from or how to structure your podcast, we've got some templates which we'll walk you through in just a moment as well. But let me show you the mic check first of all. So if you're following along, please feel free to do this. I'll try and stop speaking and just give moments and pauses of silence to allow you to do this if you want to. So this is basically, you can check your mic here. And like as I said, the mic doesn't have to be a fancy studio mic. It can just be your laptop. So if you click start, you'll see what happens is it allows you to just speak into the mic, gives you a sentence to say, but you don't have to say that. And then what it will do is it will analyze and tell you, if I just talk whilst I'm doing this test, it will analyze and tell you your distance from your microphone, the gain, the background noise, and any echo that you have. So I just done that as I was speaking, and it's told me that I need to go a little bit closer to my mic. So I probably need to just sit up a little bit more so my voice is a bit stronger. Tells me I need to have more gain there, less gain. If I've got less background noise, more background noise, or less echo, more echo. So it really helps me just to test my microphone before I dive in to record anything. And then you can listen to how that sounds as well. So you can just press listen to how it sounds, and you can hear yourself back. So you can get a gauge for, well, how good is my microphone? Do I need to do anything before I record it? So that's that feature. Super simple, super easy, just helps you to get prepared. Now, I can either go back to the home page just by clicking either the product mnemonic here, or just where it says Adobe Podcast. I can also just, there's the three main tools are listed under the tools section. So I'm just going to go back to the home page, and you'll see that these three main tools within Adobe Podcast are there. So I'm just going to show you this enhanced speech now. So even for that example, it told me I needed to be a bit closer to my mic, and maybe I'm thinking, oh, I can't get any closer. That's okay as well, because with the AI tools within Adobe Podcast, it will enhance the speech automatically for you. Now, in true Blue Peter fashion, I have recorded this earlier, not to do it on the call, but what I've done is I got a really loud ticking clock, and I put it beside my laptop, and I recorded my voice with a ticking clock, just so that you can see what it sounds like. So I'm going to play this, and I'm going to look to Alistair. I can see him at the side here, and to make sure it gives me a thumbs up to make sure we can hear it. So just so you can hear what the audio sounded like when I originally recorded it. So I'll play it now. So I'm just going to show you that I'm speaking into my laptop speaker, and I have a ticking clock behind me. But I'm just going to show you and allow you to listen to how the enhanced speech will fix this for me. Okay, so you heard that. And hopefully you could hear that really loud, obnoxious ticking clock beside my speaker as well. Now, this blew my mind when I first seen this. I was absolutely amazed that without any work on my part, without me doing anything, just clicking a button, it took all that away. So I'm just going to click Enhance Speech, and I'm going to play it again. And honestly, all I done is hit record. And that's all I did. I then walked away from my laptop. I didn't do anything with this audio apart from hit this enable button here. So I'm just going to show you that I'm speaking into my laptop speaker, and I have a ticking clock behind me. But I'm just going to show you and allow you to listen to how the enhanced speech will fix this for me. I think we can all agree that genuinely blew my mind. It's basically made me sound a whole lot better than I normally sound. Normally, I hate my voice, but it's made me sound, a little bit like a professional podcaster. It's enhanced my speech. It's made me seem closer. It's taken away the echo, and that ticking, really ticking loud noise has disappeared now. So again, if you have a piece of audio, maybe it is just an MP3 that you have, if you want to drop that into Adobe Podcast, it doesn't need to have been recorded in podcast. You could have recorded it outside of podcast. But if you want to enhance it, you can just drop this in, click Enhance the Speech, and then re-download that piece of audio out, and then that will enhance the speech for you. So it's amazing. I mean, I'm always blown away by this. And again, if you have a piece of audio that you want to drop in and give that a go, feel free to. If not, you can record a piece of audio inside podcast, download it, and then you can put this in here to enhance the audio. But this enhanced audio or enhanced speech feature is actually integrated into the studio section of Adobe Podcast. So whilst you're recording, you can enhance the speech at the same time. What the product team have done is they've just taken that feature as a standalone as well, because we were being asked from a lot of customers, hey, I've got a piece of audio and I just want to enhance it. I don't want to always have to record inside podcast. So that's why this is a standalone feature, but it's also integrated within the studio as well. So I'll just pause for questions, comments in the chat, and if not, we'll just dive into the studio section of podcasts, because essentially we've looked at two features already. That's how quick, easy podcast is to use. We've already had a look at how can you check your mic, and then how can you enhance your audio. So if we have no questions, I can't see anything coming in, I shall move on to the studio part. So the studio part is the main section of Adobe Podcast. It allows us to record, edit, and as I mentioned, enhance any of our audio that we want to do. So just click on the studio. If you're following along, please click on the studio one. And what happens is you will have some in here already. These are just welcome podcasts for you to listen to and try to get a feel for how the product works. So you might come in here and think, oh, I haven't recorded anything. Don't worry, you'll probably have two welcome to the Adobe Podcast. And that, again, it's just one that you can go in, you can have a look at, and our product manager, Mark, walks through some of the features for you as well. So that one is always there for you. But if I just scroll past them for now, you'll also see that we have some templates. So we've got templates for you to use. If you want to do that, you can have these ones, and they've got all of the intro, outro, transition audios and structure set up for you. So if you wanted to do that, you can use some template. We also have other graphic templates as well. We are going to show you that later in the session of now you've created your podcast, and what can you do to market your podcast. And quite often all of the podcasts have podcast covers, so that you can include that in any of your advertising. And again, we'll use Adobe Express to create them, but those you can access these templates from within Adobe Podcast as well, and that'll open it up inside Adobe Express for you to edit. But if I just go back up, again, we're blue petering today. We've done preparation before we came in today's session. So we actually done these two podcasts earlier. And I used an AI tool to generate me a very quick script on advertising Scotland as a holiday destination. So hopefully this will enthuse you all to come up and visit in Scotland if you're not already here. But all I've done is if I just go back and show you that again, I'll go home and I'll show you where I clicked there. Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. So we were in our studio, and I've pre-recorded this one, so I just clicked on this one. Now, if we wanted to create a brand new project, super simple, you know the blue plus sign, you click blue new project, and that will open up a brand new project for us, and then we can go ahead and start recording. So the new project is a blank page, if you like, and you'll see you can hit the record button down on the bottom. You've got the play button, so you can play back what you've recorded so far, and you can record in sections, or you can record as one whole monologue. It's entirely up to you. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to edit it if you record it in sections, and again, I'll show you how that looks when we do that. you can see we've got a few options here to invite guests to record. And we'll be doing that in a moment, and I'll show you how that works. And again, we've got the option to upload audio as well. So you'll see we've got that in two places. We've got that on the left and we've got that here as well. So if I've recorded audio outside of podcast and I want to bring that in, I can do that as well. And again, as I mentioned, we can just start recording and record directly from what we're saying and record directly into Adobe Podcast. You'll see down the left-hand side, as well as the upload, we also have our music. So that's where we have some standard intro, outro, transition music. We have placeholder, and I'll show you what that does, but it allows you to organize and set up your podcast and just put placeholders in. So if there's a piece of content that you potentially want to talk about, but you've not quite figured out what you want to say, you can just put that into a placeholder and come back to it later and record it later. Or maybe you want to add a piece of music, or maybe that's where you want somebody else to come in and you're just recording your part. And I'll show you how to do that, super simple. And then this filter here, this is where you do your enhanced speech as well. So those are the main tools within Adobe Podcast. Now, because we're on the call and we're talking here, I'm actually just going to go back to the home page and I'm going to go into one that I created earlier, which is the one on Scotland. And you'll see how I done this is I just spoke for the whole time and I didn't have a break. I didn't stop there. And you can see if I play this, I'll just play this so we can listen. Scotland, where rugged landscapes meet rich history, and every corner is a story waiting to be told. Imagine exploring misty glens, dramatic castles. Okay, I'll stop it there. That was generated by AI. But you can see that what it's doing as it's playing as well is it's highlighting my words and I can then it's transcribing what I'm saying. Now, of course, I have a Scottish accent, so sometimes it doesn't get picked up all the same. And you can see where it said certain words that it's not really picked up. So what I can do is I can highlight the word and you'll see it goes to that word, and you'll see if I do that, if you keep your eye on the timer here, it's jumping on the timer. So that's a really good way of tracking what you're saying. But you do have an option when you click on these particular words. Down here you've got an option to copy that section and paste it somewhere else, but you also have this correct transcript one as well. So if it's not quite picked up what you've said, which for my Scottish accent is often the case, I can just go in here and I can just rewrite that word to the word that I actually said. So that's what you can do. Again, as I mentioned, I'll just show you the placeholder option. So if I click on placeholder, and you'll see that I've just clicked on where my cursor is. So I'm sort of telling podcast that's where I want the placeholder to go. And I can just click placeholder. And what it does is it puts that section in there for me. Now I can click here and then I can write something that I want to do here. So maybe I want to have a transition music here. And then it just reminds me that's what I want to do. And then I can continue on building my podcast. Now talking about music. So again, I'm going to just pop my cursor back up here. If I click on the music option, I then have some of these music options that I can have a look at. So there's different types of themes of music. So bassline, heat wave, blacklight, fuzz, shimmer, sparkle. So these are just different types of genres of music. And you'll see that it offers me intros, outros, transitions, and then background music as well. And I do have an option to do long or short, but then I also have, once I add it on, I can, change how long that is, change how loud it is, and do all that kind of good stuff. So if I show you like a short intro, okay, that's a little bit too weird with the curiosity on. Maybe that's a little bit better. So I can hit the plus sign, and what will happen is that will place that audio file where I would like it to go. And you'll see on the right hand side here at the top, I can click on this bit and then I can start to make some changes here if I want to as well. So perhaps I want to fade it in or fade it out. Maybe I want to set it as a background to my audio. Again, you've got some options there, and you can then split that as well. So if you want it to come in, used to say a piece, and then it come in later again. So you've got options there if you want to make edits to that particular piece of audio. So I'm just going to have it fading in and fading out, and we'll just play that. Scotland, where so you can see it does all that work for you in terms of fading in the audio with your speech overlaid, and then allows you to carry on. So it's so simple to use, and it's quick and easy to sort of build your podcast that you want to build as well. And again, we can continue to add different pieces of music, whether we want this background, intro, outro, or the transition music, and then start to build up what this would look like. Now, I'm going to just play it again a little bit, because at the moment we haven't used the enhanced speech feature in here. So I'm going to play it again just for a couple of sentences. Then I'm going to click the enhanced speech, and then you'll hear the difference again. Rugged landscapes meet rich history. In every corner is a story waiting to be told. Imagine exploring misty glens, dramatic castles, and serene loch. Imagine. Okay, Scotland, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to click on the filters, and I'm going to click on enhanced speech, and I'm going to replay this with the enhanced speech. Scotland, where rugged landscapes meet rich history. In every corner is a story waiting to be told. So I hope you can hear the difference there. Before it was quite echoey. I'm not in a huge office, but you know, I don't have the studio requirements and mic that I need. I'm speaking into a laptop, so the audio is far away from me, so it's kind of bouncing off the walls before it reaches it. But with the enhanced speech, it just kind of zooms it all in for me and makes it sound a lot more professional, a lot more clear, and then I can, you know, have a lot more professional sounding podcast at the end of it. So again, we can continue to build this up, but in the interest of time, I wanted to sort of show you some other features within Adobe Podcast. At this point, we've got a few options. So we can, if I click the share button, what the share allows you to do is set this up as a template. So this is where sometimes the placeholders can come in handy, because you perhaps would like someone else to create a podcast, but you want it to be in keeping with your series. So it has your intro music, your outro music, your transitions, but you maybe want to have people say certain things or talk about certain things. Again, you maybe want to do the intro, and then you have a placeholder for somebody else to do something else. So this allows you to share this particular podcast as a template. And what that'll do is the same way the templates work in Adobe Express. It protects your original template, and when anyone clicks on it, it opens up their new version. So your original one remains intact, and other people can just open up their own version from your template. So you can do that here. You can also just go ahead and download this out. So you just download it out, click on the download button, and then what that allows you to do is click the download for the MP3, and you can also download the transcript as well from the screen. So again, this is really handy. I've seen some people use this potentially, you know, as an assessment. So they've asked their students to talk through something that they've done, but they want the transcript as well. So quick and easy, they can just download that. And that's essentially what you see on the screen. And that's why, if I go back and show you, sometimes where you've said something and it's not picked up the right word, you maybe want to come in here and just correct your transcript. And I'll show you that on the other one that I done with Alistair earlier, because it's definitely picked up some wrong words of what I've said on here. So this is where you can do that, just so that when you do your transcript and you export that out, you're getting the correct content and the correct words on that text file. And again, you can output the original recordings. So if you've had multiple people speaking in the podcast, this allows you to separate out the files for each of those guests as well. So you can export an MP3 and take that out of Adobe Podcast. I'm just going to go back to the home page. I'm going to pause to make sure there's no questions in the chat, and then I'm going to show you the other feature that we've not touched on yet, which is inviting guests into your podcast. So let me have a look. So captions available on the podcast. Yes. So in terms of captions, as I showed you, when you download, you can download the audio, and you can download the transcript as well when you output that. So hopefully that answers the question, Andrew. And if it doesn't, please just let us know if you want any further answers on that. Okay, I also want to show you the invite guest, because quite often a podcast has got multiple people talking in it, and that's a little bit more engaging for people. So again, these are ones that we created earlier. But I am going to show you, this one here. So you can see that I was in here, and then I invited Alistair in, and Alistair recorded this section, and then we finished off here. So you can see the icons have changed slightly based on the speaker. And then it's really simple, really easy to invite someone. I will invite Alistair in here. And what happens is, just before he comes in, I'll explain. He essentially comes into the browser. The audio comes into the browser, and then when I record, it will record both of us through the browser. And then once we're finished, when we close that browser down, it essentially drops him out of the room. But if I want to invite Alistair in, I can do it in a number of ways. Well, two ways. I can either send him the link to this particular recording and invite him to come into it, or I can email him an invite and ask them to come in and sign in and to join me. But I'm just going to send Alistair the link for this particular session, and I think Alistair might have it. Hopefully he can come in. And what will happen is, when Alistair clicks on there and comes into it, he will see him joining here. Let me see if I need to send Alistair the link. That might have been the link to Alistair being sent.
I'm just having a look for that now, Louise. Was that email, Louise?
I sent it on Teams.
Okay, thanks.
So when Alistair does come in, he'll come in up here. And as I mentioned, what you'll see in the URL link here is you'll see that it's in here. And then if we hit record, essentially it'll record my voice and Alistair's voice, and it analyzes who's who as well, which is pretty good. And essentially it'll take my section. Alistair might have to come out. But it'll take my section and identify who I am and identify who Alistair is. And the reason we've had that feedback actually is because Alistair's in here now. So it's picking up his audio through the computer, through me speaking, through our Teams channel. Actually, it's a bit like the Matrix. It kind of goes on and on and on. But you'll see up here on the left-hand side in the URL, we've got this little microphone. So that's indicating that somebody's in podcast and it's recording. So you don't have to come into Teams. You don't have to go into anything else. You can just be in this browser together. I'm going to ask Alistair to come back out, actually. I'm just going to come out and go back in again. So that's essentially, well, that's a good demonstration, actually. If I wanted to just cut that audio, I've just closed the browser window, and that's essentially just cut that audio out. And if I come back in, we'll see that it's just me again. So
I can leave this Teams webinar and just join it in podcast, Louise, if you like.
Yeah, let's
I'll do
that, and then you'll see everyone
yeah.
can see how that looks. But for now, obviously I've just come off that browser window, and it's just essentially kicked Alistair out. But the reason it's done that as well is because I'm the host of that podcast, so I have full control. So here's Alistair now, and it says microphone in use, and Alistair's here, so I'll just let Alistair say hello.
Hello.
So Alistair's now not in our Teams, he's out in podcast, and he's here. And again, a few indications. We've got this yellow, red tab, and a microphone, so it's indicating that it's recording, or it's ready to record. It wouldn't record anything until I hit the record button. So what we can do here is, I'm actually going to hit the record button. I'm going to just say a few things that probably is not in keeping with our very cool advert that we created earlier, but just to show you, and then I'll maybe have Alistair say something as well. So we're just recording for a demonstration for our podcast. So Alistair, do you want to say something as well?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me on the podcast, Louise. I'm really excited to be here, and I think it's going to be a fantastic podcast.
Okay, So we've just recorded that live in true live demo fashion. Let's see how it turns out. But it's essentially transcribing both of our audios now. So you can see it's got a green tick for me, a green tick for Alistair, and it's analysing who's who and what we said. So there you go, it's done a pretty good job. So Alistair said, amazing, we're just recording a demonstration for our podcast. So Alistair, do you want to say something as well? Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me to the podcast, Louise. I'm really excited to be here, and I think it's going to be a fantastic podcast. So it's done a great analysing both our voices, and it's taken our transcription as well. So, you know, a great way for you to invite an individual in and have them talk through the podcast with you. And then you can do it as an interview style. And again, we've got, because even though there's two of us in here, as the host of this podcast, I have options that I can add in placeholders, I can add in music. Alistair's got a slightly different view because he's been invited in. He doesn't have the same controls as me as the host. So Alistair wouldn't be able to, hit the record button. Alistair wouldn't be able to add music in and do all the editing because this is my podcast, it's my login. I've just invited him in to just record with me. So I have full control as the host of this. But what I'll do is I'll just let Alistair drop out of there. And then if he wants to come back into the Teams, he can come back into the Teams channel. And you'll see there, it's taken away my recording option and my guest has now disappeared. So essentially it's nice and simple, nice and easy. And I wanted to show you here, so some of the words it hasn't picked up properly for my accent. And again, I wanted to just show you there how this looks. I think this one here, if you wanted to change, let's say for example, I said this part here and I'm thinking I really didn't like that anymore. I don't want to say that because it's kind of repeating myself. So what I can do is I can just highlight all of this section and just hit delete, and that's it edited. So if anyone's done editing before and then had to use a timeline and expand an audio file and then scroll and scrub along and do your cut tool and then cut out another piece, it can take a little bit of time. The fact that you can just highlight a piece, and I'll show you again, I'll just undo it. I just done Control Z. So let's say, for example, I didn't like this piece here. So I'll show you, I'll listen from here so you can hear the difference.
The world's most vibrant and dynamic cities. Nature in the City is not only a podcast for nature lovers, but also for...
Okay, I'm thinking I don't want that part. I want to take that out. And I'm going to just do it from there because I want to have Alistair part, but I don't want to have this part because I repeat myself. So I'm just going to hit delete. I'm going to go back to here and then I'm going to play. And
one of the world's most vibrant and dynamic cities. Alistair, I'd love to hear from you and learn.
So you see, you don't have to do any fancy editing. You can just edit the text on the page and it will automatically do that for you, which I think is pretty neat if anybody's done audio editing in the past. Okay, now we've got some questions coming in, so I'm going to just pause to answer some of these questions. So Andrew, by captions, I mean, will the spoken word appear on the podcast while playing? Sorry for the panopto. So there is a way we could potentially do this actually, Andrew. So what we could do is there is a way to caption videos inside Express. So you're right, Andrew, what you would have to have is almost a thumbnail, if you like, or an image that you could then put the audio file on the bottom of. That would then create your MP4, and then what you could do is overlay, you could then caption that inside Adobe Express. So hopefully that answered the question, and if it doesn't, please feel free to come off mute because I think we've got a small enough group here to do so, or you can type again into the chat if you want to as well. Yeah, so I think Alistair actually said the same before I even read it. So look at that. We're thinking the same. So Edward as well, when inviting a guest speaker, would you advise that they have decent external mic rather than using their built-in device mic, or is the enhanced speech good for them as well? It's a great question, and it absolutely is. So when you hit enhanced speech, if I show you, it enhances the speech for everything, not just your audio as the host. It covers the whole podcast. So even the person you're inviting in doesn't have to have fancy, they can just do it on their laptop, don't have to have a fancy mic. you can enhance theirs as well. So good question. Christopher, I tend to do that as well. I a lot as well inside these. There is a way to edit them out easily. They will show up in the transcript if they're like long pauses, or so they will show in that. And again, you can just edit them out. You would just highlight the word like this one, and then you just hit delete, and then that would delete that there. So you can edit them out. Awesome. Any other questions before we move on? I don't think so. Awesome. So that's Adobe Podcast in a nutshell. It's super simple to use. I would highly encourage you to go and have a play, take a look around, see how you would want to build it. As I said, when I've done this in the past, I tend to use a lot of the placeholders because it's just how I work. I like to get right in there and say, right, I'm going to say this and I'm going to say that, and then I'll work out what I'm going to say later. So that kind of the story narrative is more important to get that laid out, and then I'll come back and record my different sections. So you can use the placeholders to do so, and then of course all the music is built in as well. So let's switch gears then, because the next part of any podcast, and this actually leans a little bit to Andrew's question as well, is your podcast cover. So, promoting your podcast, having that podcast cover. And again, you can use Adobe Express to create that podcast cover. And we do have some templates down here as well to be able to do that. So I wanted to just have a look at some of these. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to take this blue one and just click on edit that. And you'll see what happens is it's just opened this in Adobe Express for me to come in and make edits to it. And again, super simple, like everything else, I can start to make edits to this in Express and start to build out what my podcast cover would look like. So, of course, we done it on Scotland and we did one on nature. So we probably want to have it a bit more nature feeling, if you like. So let's change the background colour to maybe a green. It's a bit more in keeping. I'm going to just come to my media. I'm going to look for a nature. Let's do city forest and see what we've got here. That looks quite good. I'm going to just set that as a blend so that it kind of goes behind my screen, and I'll set it as the page background. So again, all I've done is change my background, found a photo, and then just put it as a blend here. And then what I can do is just start to move some of these other graphics around. So I don't want to be too presumptuous that I'm going to be the #1 podcast, but we can say, episode 1 of my podcast. And then we can, sometimes on podcasts, we often see people on there promoting who they are. So let's get Alistair and I and put us in there. There's me, there's Alistair. And again, using the power of Express, I'm just going to remove Alistair's background on there so that I only get Alistair. There we go. And I'm going to do the same on me. Just remove my background. There we go. Let's do us a bit more hip and young with the kids. Let's do us a bit of a slant. And then maybe we can maybe make Alistair a bit bigger since he was my guest. And move him to the front. And then I'm just going to highlight us both and then maybe add some effect on us, like grey us out. And then we can name our podcast. What did we want to call it? Scotland and Edinburgh destinations. So what we can do from here then, once we've got our podcast cover photo, as Andrew had asked about adding the audio to it, it's one thing we could do. So our audio that we had here inside our Adobe podcast, I'll just go back into our guest one where Alistair and I talked about Edinburgh. I think we called our podcast Nature and Environments. What we can do here is I can download this audio file so it downloads outside of podcast into an MP3. And then in Adobe Express, I could add this as a WAV file onto this particular image. And then if we wanted to, then that would create an MP4. And to show Andrew's question, we can then caption that video from there as well. So it would then add the words into that. So let's do that now. Just going to download that MP3. I'll let that do that while I come here. I'm just going to move these around a little bit, make them look a bit fancier. If anybody's following along, feel free to do so. Maybe we want to write a little bit about what our podcast is. So I'm just going to come here on the text. I'm going to add a text. Listen to our podcast about cities and nature. So actually, I'm not very good at writing that. I want it to make it a little bit more inspirational and a little bit better. So this is one of my new favorite features in Adobe Express. You have this rewrite option. So I can click rewrite and I can rephrase this. I can shorten it or I can lengthen it. I'm just going to rephrase it. And I want it to be a bit more inspirational. So use a bit more inspiring words. And I can click generate. And what that'll do in Express is it will then go and generate new inspirational quote for me. So maybe tune into our amazing podcast on urban landscapes, beauty of nature. Don't like that one. Immerse yourself in our captivating podcast discussing cityscapes and this serene embrace of nature. Maybe not. So maybe embark. Here we go. Use that one and click replace. And then that's kind of replaced those words for me. And then what we can do is we can start to just change the text and make it look a little bit better on the screen as well. So I'll just pause for questions, thoughts, comments in the chat, and I'll just check. Julian, it looks like Alistair might have answered this one, but let's have a look. Is there a way of splitting the audio track into guests that have been brought in? The issue I have is guests talking over each other when the audio's flattened. It's difficult to remove the background chatter. Yeah, so Alistair sort of said each guest should have their own icon to identify them in the podcast interface, and it makes them easier to edit them. That's right. And actually, that has happened to myself when I've recorded with a colleague. Actually, Alistair and I did this today, and what happened was it looked like, because Alistair had some background noise, when I said my piece, Alistair's then came in with one word, and then I said a piece, and then Alistair, it looked like Alistair said one word, but I think it was somebody in the background. And I was so easy to come in and just highlight that word, delete, highlight the word, delete, highlight the word, delete. So you can absolutely do that just in the same way as I showed you previously, where on the transcript, you can just highlight the word and highlight that sentence and just hit delete. And you'll see that just takes it away entirely. So I'll just go back. If I highlight this, hit delete, takes it away entirely. So absolutely you can do that, Julian. Any other questions? And I know I've done really quickly showing you Express, but again, conscious that we wanted to focus our attention on Adobe Podcast today. So if you want me to show you more in Express and demo how to create a cover in a little bit more detail, happy to do that. We have the time. Just let me know in the chat. But as I said, today was around showing you how to create a podcast in Adobe Podcast and some of the features within there. So we've spent most of our time in Adobe Podcast doing that. I'm just going to do some edits here whilst we just wait to see if there's any questions in the chat pod. I don't know if anything is coming in, Alistair.
Yeah, so I don't think there's any additional questions yet, Louise. I'll drop in some information about some of our digital badging programs as well. So there is actually a podcasting digital certificate that you can get, and so you can get an Adobe certified certificate in podcasting. So let me just drop in the link in there, and these are courses that are about 2 hours long, but they're broken up into 15-20 minute chunks, so you can do them when you've got time. It's actually a really nice little course on podcasting, and that's independently assessed, and you'll be sent out a digital badge for that as well. So that's well worth doing. We're actually now this is the final webinar of this year, so thanks everybody for coming along. But next year we are returning, and we are going to be putting out the the program for next year very soon, so look out for that in our Creative Campus newsletter. So let me just grab our Creative Campus newsletter subscription. So if you haven't already subscribed to our Creative Campus newsletter, this is your chance to do so. So just click on the link there in the chat, and we'll be telling you all about everything we've got coming up next year. More of these webinars, more training sessions, lots and lots of exciting events that we've got planned. We've been planning very actively for that, so do click on that and subscribe to the newsletter as well. And I'll also drop in once again the link to the YouTube site, so if you do want to go back and check out any of our previous sessions, and this session we'll put up on the site possibly as early as later today, but it might be in the next couple of days. Once I get this edited and uploaded. So yeah, great. I'm glad. It sounds like everybody's enjoyed it today. So thank you very much. Love your questions, very engaged, and thank you so much to Louise as well for leading the session today.
Yeah, no problem. And as Alistair was just chatting there, if people were following along, all I'd done here is just finished my design. I came to the media section inside Adobe Express, came to audio, and then uploaded from my device because I downloaded that MP3 file out of Adobe Podcast, and you'll see that it's here. So if I just play that.
Welcome to Nature in the City, a podcast that explores the hidden.
So everything's there now with my graphic. And again, I've got options. I can download that as an MP4 to answer Andrew's question, then caption it, or I can just share that with colleagues or share that with whomever I want to share that with. So just to kind of show that and finish that part off for you as well.
Fantastic.
So it sounds like we've got some people leaving, which is great. It means you've got what you wanted from the session. And as Alistair said, please look out in our newsletter for the 2025 webinars that are coming up.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.